moved inwards. We walked throughout that night. Then I came close to the base camp. There's a group called the SPCC, Sagarmatha Pollution Control Committee. The boys were going up to collect the waste. I met them and carried me down.
Everyone is saying that it's a miracle. It's been very hard for the people to believe his story of survival. I got a chance to meet a lot of people and his well-wishers and his relatives as well. And they were there with flowers and bouquet, and they were wishing his speedy recovery. And they said that this is only possible when there is a Sherpa. Okay, they were praising his bravery and they were praising his will for the life, praising the power of Sherpas. And also, they talked about anything is possible when there is a Sherpa alive. And I took his wife and daughter also. They were very much happy to see Dawa Sherpa alive, but they're still waiting for the answers about why he was left alone.
Chris Thrall was on the climb with Dawa. He explains how he became separated from the group.
Dawa sat down on his backpack as he had done hundreds of times before to take a short rest. And as I descended the next 1,500 meters alone, I came across
Thinking
the
of you
Polish
both,
climber with
can't
no
wait
oxygen, battling fairly severe
for all the
frostbite.
beautiful
So
manifestation.
immediately my attention obviously turned to the weakest member of the trio. What should have taken 2 hours, the conditions were so bad, and with no oxygen, took about 11 hours. Complete whiteout,
Okay,
all the
so
ropes were
Ashley
afoot under
and
snow.
DJ
We were just
Mendel,
guessing which way to
Ashley
go.
Mendel and Alex
that we
are
didn't
planning
end up
some
in
good.
That's just quite a godsend.
Chris also describes hearing the news Dawa was alive, one day after going to see Dawa's family.
It's kind of crazy 1 minute to be fighting back tears with his daughter, and then the next minute to see him doing a Crocodile Dundee and crawling into town. It's absolutely amazing. Beyond words, looking forward to speaking to him, but moreover, absolutely fascinating to know what happened. Just amazed by it already. How he would have crossed the Kumbu Icefall with no ladders, beggars belief. That takes it from a sort of utterly brutal ninja feat of endurance to just something else again. I mean, you're talking serious ice climbing. Just incredible.
That was Chris Thrall. Now, what are the chances of answering an exam question on a piece of work you inspired? That's exactly what happened to Emily Cullen's son when he turned to the page of his English test and saw a poem she had written about him. Branka Lesser reports.
Emily Cullen, a poet from Galway, had spent the morning helping his son cram in some revision for his afternoon English exam.
It was an ordinary day like every other, except with the tension of the state exam that morning and trying to do last minute revision of Shakespeare Code.
So when she met him afterwards, and he looked pleased, she assumed their work had paid off.
He had a big, broad smile on his face, and I thought, oh, that's good, he must have remembered his Shakespeare Code.
But it wasn't Macbeth or Hamlet that had come up on 15-year-old Lee's paper. Instead, it was a poem written by Emily herself, about him.
He said, you won't believe it, Mom, the poem you wrote about me came up in the paper. And I said, what? And he said, the one about the chalk.
Enfield and Chalk was written by Emily after she spotted something Lee had written in chalk on the pavement outside their home. He was 8 years old, and the message read, "The world is great." It was just what Emily needed.
To bring me back to reality and to remind me that things weren't so bad and there was beauty all around me and lots of wonder in the everyday.
The poem was first published as an Irish Times Poem of the Week, before later appearing in Emily's third collection, Conditional Perfect. But 7 years later, she could never have imagined it would come up on her son's exam paper.
It was just the most flabbergasting moment. I kind of thought it felt like it was in another dimension.
Lee had also been in shock when he flipped open his exam and saw his mother's words. Initially, the coincidence posed a problem. Admit in his answer that the poem was about him, embrace the delusional, or respond to it as he would any other text.
When he took a moment, he thought, well, the person reading my exam probably won't believe that I inspired the poem and that my mom wrote the poem about something that I chalked on the pavement. So he opted to respond to the question in the third person.
Once the exam was over, the emotions sunk in. Lee asked his mum to pick him up so he could tell her.
I got quite emotional about it, as you would, and my breath was taken away, really. I was just kind of in a state of pleasant shock.
Emily's life has changed considerably since she wrote Emperor and Shaw. Her own mother has since died, and she's now caring for her 95-year-old father, who recently returned home from hospital. The world is great. Those words her son wrote on the pavement all those years ago remain more important than ever.
We do have to kind of remind ourselves of the gift that life is and the gift of the wonders all around us in abundance amid the darkness and the dark times.
For Emily, there was no better reminder of this wonder than having her own 15-year-old son answer an exam question on a poem she wrote, inspired by him.
It's an amazing thing. I mean, what are the odds that would happen? It's kind of a once-in-a-lifetime synchronicity, really.
Emily Cullen ending that report by Branka Lesser-Disa. To the state of Oklahoma now, and a 12-year-old boy with a very special talent. Take a listen to this. That is Samuel Henderson imitating bird calls. He can do 115 different types. A video of him performing at his school talent show went viral. Samuel and his mother Laurie have been speaking to my colleague Rachel Burden.
When I was 4 years old, at the zoo, I started mimicking this great-toed grackle that was bothering my sister.
And what does the great-toed grackle sound like?
That is an incredible sound.
We have a video of him when it happened, and he actually jumped whenever it started talking back to him. It was a pretty neat moment.
So the bird certainly wasn't expecting it. And from there on, Samuel, you began to look at other birds and just pick up these extraordinary sounds. Was this deliberate? Did you go home and listen to different bird sounds, or were these birds that you were encountered when you were out and about?
Yeah, both. And also I listened to them on my YouTube and searched for sounds.
He's always liked birds. He's always said he wants to fly. He was jealous. And then he found that birds are more beautiful and had more elaborate calls as he went along.
What bird have you got there, Samuel?
The American crow. I can do the crow that's from your country too.
I would love to hear a British crow. Why don't you do the American one first and then the British one, and we'll see if we can hear the difference.
I have to bob to be able to do the sound because it's so loud.
Okay, let's hear the British crow then. Typical, the British one definitely sounds more miserable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So tell me about how you use your body, your voice, your throat to make these sounds. Because even if I wasn't trying to sound like a bird, I don't think I could produce the same noise that you do.
Like the bar owl, I have to build up a lot of air to be able to do it.
Well, we'd love to hear that. Can you do that for us? That's so beautiful. What are your favourite birds, Samuel?
There was one that quit song. I really want to go get the stuffed animal then.
Yeah, maybe we could go and do that. While you do that, Laurie, tell us a bit more about Samuel as a boy then, and what he's like as a child and his personality.
Samuel's always been very loud, very vocal. He is a people's person. He loves animals. He loves people. He loves to talk.
Samuel, you've got the bird that you wanted to get. What is it you're holding right now?
It's my favorite bird. There was one that quit song.
And what sound does this one make? Is that you making that sound, Samuel?
Yeah.
It's absolutely extraordinary. What has been the reaction then from people? Because it's gone viral, not just across America, but across the world, Laurie.
It has. We've actually received gifts as far as Australia. They sent him stuffed birds, kookaburras.
I feel like I'm in the forest listening to that.
Every day.
Samuel and Laurie speaking to Rachel Burden. Coming up on the Happy Pod.
I think so. They just keep popping up everywhere.
It's very community, and I love living here for that reason.
She's like some sort of superhero in the village.
The woman who's been knitting toys and hiding them in her village. You're listening to the Happy Pod. To Sweden next, a country with more than 250,000 islands. So many that it decided it could give up control of 5 of them for a year. The online competition asked for video entries, and here's a taste of some of the winners.
Guys, you're not going to believe this. We are going to win the contest to win an island in Sweden.
What are you talking about?
They're giving away like 5 islands in Sweden, and you have to make a video about it, and then you win an island.
Soy Dani, latinoamericana y doctora en Suiza. Do you like Sweden? I was actually planning a trip to Sweden when I learned of this opportunity. What do you plan to do on the island? Just enjoy the nature. I'm sorry, I know that makes me sound kind of boring. That's okay, you'll fit right in.
Hey, ich bin Nili, ich bin 27 Jahre alt und Illustratorin aus Deutschland.
The last winner there was German art student Miriam Wieskman. She's been speaking to Stephanie Prentice.
When I got the email that I actually won the island, I don't know, I couldn't believe it was true. Yeah, I think it's going to be really nice. I'm like the official custodian of the island, but I don't really have any tasks to do, so it's more like a symbolic thing. And the main prize is actually a travel voucher for 20,000 crowns, which is like around 2,000 euros. So I'll actually be traveling there with like a really good friend from childhood, and I think that's going to be the most exciting part.
So tell me a little bit about your island.
I think all of the 5 islands that you could win are quite similar in size, so there's not really any buildings on there, so you can't really live there. And I think mine is about like 9 kilometers from the shore, so it's not that easy to get there. But people have told me that you can use the kayak or stand-up paddle to get there. And in the summertime, there's mostly birds living on the island, so I'm going to be there in September now, and hopefully don't annoy them too much.
How different is this to your normal life, going from living in Germany to kayaking to your private island?
It's really different, I think.
Okay, so you know what I was just thinking
in a
about?
smaller
Why nobody's
city
there?
in Germany, and I like study
Maybe
communication
you should
design
make it
and
a
mostly
side.
focus on illustration right now. I think it's going to be really nice to be out in nature because that's what gives me most inspiration for my art and my illustration practice. And I think spending time there and with the birds can be super inspiring for me for another project, or like maybe a book or a comic or something.
What is it about Sweden or Swedish culture that really resonates with you?
It feels to me like much less stressful than life in Germany in some way. I feel like some of the stereotypes about like German culture might be true, that it's like really punctual, everything is kind of strategic and like logical maybe, and it has to make sense. And I feel like when I'm in Sweden, I can kind of like leave that behind and just having like a more direct connection to nature.
And you said that you were surprised to win, but now that you have, what has that really taught you?
I think it just taught me to just try things, even if they don't really seem promising at first. Like to just do all the crazy stuff that I could think doesn't really make sense or like doesn't really have high prospects of winning.
You've seen the island obviously in pictures and things and online, but how do you think you'll feel when you're on that paddleboard or on that canoe and you see it for the first time?
I'm not really sure. I'm really, really excited to see how it's going to feel. I think just taking the flight or like the train, we haven't decided quite yet, to Sweden to know that I'm going to see the island, it's going to feel really, really exciting. And I think I'm just going to be really happy to actually see this island that I've talked about so much now. And I think it's going to feel really surreal to be there. And yeah, I'm also really excited to meet the people who live in the region and to hear their stories.
And you might end up being a bit of a local celebrity, actually.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Like, it's really funny because actually the first newspaper that reached out to me was like the local newspaper from this town. And I was really excited to give them an interview, and like they published it. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see people like recognize me and maybe want to chat with me. So that would be really nice. And I'm really looking forward to meet them.
Miriam Wieskman speaking to Stephanie Prentice. Barry Manilow has enjoyed a 60-year-long career in entertainment, but the American singer recently had to take a break after being diagnosed with lung cancer. Now he's recovered and at the age of 82 is back doing what makes him happy. The Happy Pod's Charlotte Gallagher has been to meet him at one of his rehearsals.
The ultimate showman, Barry Manilow, is back performing just months after recovering from cancer.
I'm feeling great. Yes, everything's all better.
You look fantastic. It's really hard to believe that you have been so unwell. Were you scared at all during that point, or did you think, I'm going to get through this?
It was a rough ride. It was 7 days in ICU. Because, it wasn't so much the surgery that got me, it was the pneumonia that got me. I could have gone after the surgery through that tumor and the garbage, and I could have gone home. And it was pneumonia that kept me in the hospital for a long time.
You're facing your immortality, and then also, I know how much you love performing, and you weren't able to perform for quite some time. How did that feel?
It was agony. I have no patience. And I know the doctor said it would take a while for everything to come back, but it was agony. I hated just sitting and waiting. They really did a number on me, and it took a long time to recover from it. It really did, longer than I thought.
Because for Barry Manilow, performing on stage is what makes him happy.
I like being with my band and the crew and their family. So that's what I was missing. I was missing this.
And your fans are like family as well, because they follow you everywhere. Some of them have seen you 60, 70 times. Why do you think you inspire that devotion? Because not every artist has that.
I've never been able to answer that question. I have no idea. I'm just a skinny guy that plays the piano. That's what I think of myself. I don't know why I've got these wonderful people that's been supporting me for years and years. And I've met them, and they're great people. They really are.
Families.
Yeah, families.
And do you still get the knickers thrown at you? Do you still get the knickers thrown on stage?
No more.
Do you miss it?
No more.
Is there any kind of showgirls or showmen out there at the moment that you think, I'd quite like to work with them? Or
Everybody would say Gaga.
She's amazing.
She's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
She is fantastic.
Yeah.
So perhaps a duet album, Manilow and Gaga. I can see it happening. You might want to borrow some of your costumes though.
I don't know. Let's see what this album does before we go to the next one.
Is there any chance you could maybe play a little bit of a tune for BBC?
What would we like to hear?
Yeah, Copacabana. Take it away, Barry.
That's right.
I feel very honoured.
Oh, yeah?
I'm very privileged. I know there's millions of families out there that are very, very jealous of me.
They shouldn't be jealous of you.
Barry Manilow speaking to Charlotte Gallagher. We end in the northwest of England, where hundreds of handmade soft toys have been turning up around a village. The knitted teddies come with a tag signed by Granny H, and for the past 2 years, her identity has been a mystery. Until now, grandmother June Rose Hood is the secret knitter. And to say thank you, the locals threw her a surprise 90th birthday party. Jane McCubbin went along to find out more.
I think so. I've only been here for 2.5 years now. They just keep popping up everywhere.
I think it's super cute. It's very community, and I love living here for that reason.
For 2 years, these knitted teddies have popped up all over. Little is known about the hands and the helpers behind these small acts of kindness just waiting to be found. Have you heard the name Granny H?
I've only through hearsay. I don't know her,
I don't even know who she is. I think it's like maybe not even a real person.
She definitely is.
Found it! It says, I am not lost, I am alone. If you want me, please take me.
If you would like me, please take me home. I'm yours to keep or give away. I hope I made you smile today.
Granny H.
Granny H.
So Granny H is
My grandma.
a legend.
Yes, she is. She's becoming quite famous in the area.
Famous? Definitely. But elusive? Absolutely.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, God.
Ow, there goes my
I'm
head.
June. I'm 90 years old tomorrow. I just love doing it.
She has made, and grandson Matt has hidden hundreds of teddy bears for children to find. So she took up to combat anxiety, and it works.
That's the lamb.
I don't want
That's
to
a
put on
teddy
this.
bear.
That means
That's rabbit.
But until now, Granny H has remained firmly in the shadows.
You may never see children finding your gifts.
No, I can just imagine the little faces lighting up.
As an anxious person, this helps.
It's the best thing I've ever done, I think, for it. Yes, I really do.
And which ones are your favourites?
I only have one favourite, and him.
Where did you find him?
My driveway.
They're popping up everywhere, aren't they?
If you didn't have it in your life, what would life feel like, do you think?
I think I'd be, well, my children and grandchildren might say I am now, but I think I'd be a real old grumpy person.
She knows her teddies have spread joy because occasionally people post messages of thanks on a local Facebook page. But what she doesn't know is that many of them have gathered just before her 90th birthday to have the chance to say thank you in person.
Hi, Mum. Do you want to come over with Grandma? We're all ready.
You know what she looks like.
All right, see you shortly.
You know how old she is.
19!
19!
19!
She's like some sort of superhero in the village. You know, in Facebook pages you can get a lot of negative stories, but this is something that's always really nice and positive.
It's all the kids that found your teddies, Grandma.
I'm absolutely shocked. It's nice to see you all.
Oh, it's been magical.
Thank you very much. You left me.
I can't thank everybody enough for recognising what my mum does. She's got a heart of gold.
Lovely. Thank you, my darling.
She went through a tough time last year, felt very lonely, a little bit lost.
It's changed her life, hasn't it?
Absolutely changed her life. The minute she wakes up, she can't get those knitting needles out quick enough.
I think it's amazing what you do, honestly. I don't think you realise like how much pleasure it brings to people.
I just sit in there and the time flies by. In fact, I don't really want to do the housework anymore.
No tablets, no pills, no medication.
No, absolutely.
She feels like a different person.
She does.
Proof that kindness is good for the soul. And after all that joy of giving, Granny H finally gets to receive the love right back.
It's overwhelming, and I just don't know what to say. And I think this is the best thing that's ever happened in my 90 years.
June Rose Hood, or Granny H, ending that report by Jane McCubbin. And that's all from the Happy Pod for now. We'd love to hear from you. As ever, the address is globalpodcast@bbc.co.uk. This edition was knitted together by Craig Kingham. The producer was Rachel Bulkley and the editor is Karen Martin. I'm Holly Gibbs. Until next time, goodbye. The headlines might change, then change again. But our commitment to the facts won't budge. I'm Jess Hazel. Stay focused and informed with OPD's Morning Edition from 5 to 9 every weekday morning.
The BBC World Service continues here on OPD, KOPD from Portland, KOAD from KRBM from Pendleton, KOPK from Baker City, KTVR from the Grand, KOGL FM Glenny Beach, KOAD from Lakeview, KTK from Silvermont, KOTD from Dallas, KOPD from Dallas, KOPD from Eugene, KOAC from Fort Balance, KOAC from Soria, KHRV from Lund River, KTB from Inspires, and KRDA FM from John Day. You can find us anytime at opd.org.
BBC World Service, it's 8 o'clock GMT. This is Oliver Conway with the newsroom. The US and Iran sign an agreement to end their war, but tough negotiations lie ahead.
Why would Iran negotiate in good faith
when they're getting paid up front a slush fund of $300 billion plus relief of harsh American sanctions before having to give up any concessions on the nuclear file?
And will Israel play ball? Iran thinks not.
Trump has realized this was an unnecessary war. He's interested in ending it, but we have this elephant in the room, and his name is Netanyahu.
Also today, Ukraine launches what appears to be its largest drone attack yet on the Russian capital. And later,
They're quite wriggly, so they will try and sort of get away, and that's really all that's required. It's not too difficult.
a new species of walking shark is found in Papua New Guinea. First, our top stories.
BBC News with Moira Alderson. The United States and Iran have signed the Memorandum of Understanding intended to lead to an end to their war, with the two countries and their respective allies saying military operations will immediately end on all fronts, including in Lebanon. Both countries' presidents signed the document remotely. Here's our international editor, Jeremy Bowen.
The Memorandum of Understanding is not a final deal. It is an agreement to talk about the biggest issue between them, Iran's nuclear program. But it's front-loaded with key inducements for Iran. It will immediately be able to earn billions of dollars from exporting oil. The memorandum says the US will start releasing billions more in frozen Iranian assets. There is a promise of lifting sanctions. It is all dependent on the success of 60 days of talks on a nuclear deal that can be extended and probably will be as the issues are complex.
Work on the details of implementing the US-Iran deal begins on Friday in the Swiss mountain resort of Birkenstock, where the Iranians and the Americans will meet, along with Pakistani and Qatari mediators. Israel is insisting its forces will continue occupying parts of Lebanon, where they're fighting Hezbollah. Ukraine has struck an oil refinery in Moscow for the second time this week, setting it ablaze. Fires at the Katonia refinery have sent columns of thick smoke billowing high into the sky. The capital's 4 airports have been temporarily closed. Our Russia editor Steve Rosenberg is in Moscow.
This isn't the first time that Ukrainian drones have targeted the Russian capital, but the scale of this does appear to be larger than we've seen before. The Moscow mayor, Sergei Sobyanin, wrote on social media that around 180 Ukrainian drones had been shot down by Russian air defences. Clearly, from images that have been posted on social media, it seems that some drones may have got through.
President Zelensky called the strikes on Moscow and elsewhere a completely fair response to Russian attacks on Ukrainian cities and communities. Cuba's communist government has approved reforms aimed at opening up more sectors of the economy to private investment as the Caribbean country deals with an acute economic crisis. Here's our Global Affairs reporter, Mimi Swaby.
Cuban state television said the Communist Party's Central Committee had approved proposals designed to attract more capital from its nationals abroad and to reduce the size of the state. The influential former president, Fidel Castro, who is still believed to be Cuba's de facto leader, has endorsed the reforms. The measures, a stark U-turn in decades of communist rule, are a desperate attempt by the government to tackle widespread shortages of basic goods. The island's economy has deteriorated since January, when the US ousted its main regional ally, Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro, and imposed a near-total fuel blockade.
World News from the BBC. Heavy gunfire and explosions have been heard in the capital of Niger, Niamey. Reports say attackers have managed to gain access to the international airport. Security forces have blocked off the surrounding area. The shooting is said to have begun at dawn local time and is ongoing. Defence forces are on high alert. An affiliate of the Islamic State group claimed responsibility for an attack on the airport in January. Niger has struggled to contain attacks from jihadist groups. Scientists have found the oldest known evidence of the plague in the remains of 18 ancient hunter-gatherers near Siberia's Lake Baikal. Carbon dating of their teeth revealed the disease sparked deadly outbreaks 5,500 years ago, 200 years earlier than previously known cases. A shark in Papua New Guinea that can walk with most of its body out of the water has been identified as a new species. Warren Bull has more details.
Locals in Papua New Guinea have long been aware of the shark, which uses its pectoral fins-like legs to move across reef flats at low tide. Researchers from Queensland in Australia say they saw one of the sharks, 3/4 of a metre long, with a striking leopard-like pattern, swimming above the seagrass in Milne Bay in Papua New Guinea. DNA tests have confirmed it's distinct from the other 9 species of walking shark, only found in Australia and Papua New Guinea. They all face grave threats from habitat loss caused by coastal development and coral bleaching.
Warren Bull with that report. Football, and in their first ever World Cup appearance, Uzbekistan lost 3-1 to Colombia in Mexico City. In earlier matches, Ghana scored a goal in added time to beat Panama 1-0 in Toronto, while England beat Croatia 4-2 in Dallas, with Harry Kane scoring twice. Meanwhile, the Democratic Republic of Congo earned their first ever World Cup point in a 1-1 draw against Portugal in Houston. BBC News.
Thank you. You're listening to the newsroom from the BBC World Service with Oliver Conway. The most famous Treaty of Versailles is widely seen as having paved the way for the rise of the Nazis. But such omens were set aside at the famous French palace yesterday as President Trump put his signature to the Memorandum of Understanding with Iran. The deal, which was also signed in Tehran by the Iranian president, aims to end the war which began with US and Israeli attacks on Iran 110 days ago. But far from the unconditional surrender originally demanded by the American leader, it really marks the start of negotiations over his key demand to prevent Iran getting a nuclear weapon. That was also the aim of an agreement that Mr. Trump pulled out of in 2018, one that had been agreed by President Obama. Joel Rubin helped negotiate that earlier deal. So how does this new one compare?
This language here is weaker than what was in the JCPOA, the Obama nuclear deal from 2015, related to Iran's commitment to never obtain a nuclear weapon. And why did I say it's weaker? Because that deal had very annotated, structured designs in it that explained exactly what Iran could and could not do. Levels of enrichment, numbers of centrifuges, where to place the centrifuges, how to inspect them, kinds of inspections that would be underway, the penalties tied to any violation by Iran of that nuclear infrastructure, of their use of it beyond what they agreed to. None of that is here. Now, they're supposed to negotiate that in this second round. We'll see. And why would Iran? Why would Iran negotiate in good faith when they're getting paid up front a slush fund of $300 billion plus relief of harsh American sanctions at the front end before having to give up any concessions on the nuclear file? And so what it does is it really flips on its head the long-standing American policy towards Iran. One of the core rationales for this military action of the past several months was the reality that Iran wasn't just oppressing its own people, but was slaughtering them by the thousands. And the president rightly said this is wrong. And so now to see it in black and white, where essentially the United States walks away from the Iranian people, an issue that consistently in legislation and in multiple administrations, Democratic and Republican alike, they have consistently argued that it's crucial for Iran's government to treat its people with dignity and humanity. And to see us walk away from that is quite stark, and I think really sends a negative signal to people around the world who are concerned about human rights, and in particular the people in Iran who've put their bodies on the line to try to change this regime, to now see us turn away from them.
Joel Rubin. Well, under the Memorandum of Understanding, Iran and the US and their allies will halt all military action, including in Lebanon, where the US and Iran will start lifting their blockades of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran repeated its promise not to procure or develop nuclear weapons, and the two sides will work to resolve the issue of Iran's enriched uranium. At the same time, sanctions on Iran will be lifted, and the US will oversee a $300 billion reconstruction package. So, what is the view from Iran? Fouad Izadi is Associate Professor at Tehran University.
The government in Iran has learned not to trust the United States because they generally don't do what they write in the paper. But Iran wanted to be compensated for all the damages. Yesterday, Trump said that the war costed Iran about $2 trillion. So 300 billion is a relatively low number in comparison to that. But whether that will actually happen, the US will not take part in terms of paying to that fund. People expect Iran's neighboring countries would do that, given the fact that they provided bases to the United States to attack Iran. I think Trump has realized that this was a failed policy, this was an unnecessary war, an illegal war. I think he's interested in ending it. I think Iran is interested in ending it. Iran was trying to avoid this war to start with. But we have this elephant in the room, and his name is Netanyahu. And he has been trying in the last number of days to sabotage this agreement.
Well, despite Lebanon being included in the deal, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu said his forces would remain in the country when they are fighting Hezbollah. The Iran-backed militia's chief, Naim Qassem, called the deal a great victory and urged Lebanon to seize the moment to expel Israeli forces. Lebanese authorities say Israeli attacks since March have killed more than 3,800 people there, and displaced more than 1 million others. So, how does the Israeli government view this deal? I asked our correspondent in Jerusalem, John Donaldson.
Well, they're not happy with it, but they're going along with it for now. I mean, basically, I think Prime Minister Netanyahu is in a very tight spot because on the one hand, he doesn't want to upset even more than he appears to already have done so President Trump, Israel's greatest ally, but at the same time, he's under enormous pressure politically here in Israel, with elections coming up in a few months' time. He's doing badly in the polls, and his opponents here are capitalising on what they see as a fiasco in terms of the operation in Iran and the subsequent negotiations. I was just looking at some comments from Yair Lapid, the leader of Israel's opposition, saying Netanyahu promised us a historic victory. We've got a crisis with the Americans, Hormuz open up to Iranians, money for the Revolutionary Guards, ballistic missiles aimed at us, and Israel just waiting in the corridor like a scolded child. So, as I say, Prime Minister Netanyahu has got some thinking to do with these elections coming up, and he's in a difficult position.
Iran has insisted that Israeli attacks on parts of Lebanon must stop. What do you think will happen there in the next few days and weeks?
Well, look, they have significantly reduced since this deal was announced at the weekend, but they've not stopped altogether. So most days this week, people have been being killed in Israeli strikes in southern Lebanon, which Israel says is targeting Hezbollah. Hezbollah has been exchanging fire. I saw the Israeli military put out a statement overnight saying that again there have been exchanges of fire with Hezbollah. We had another Israeli soldier being killed in southern Lebanon. So the pressure that I was talking about is in particular in relation to Lebanon. I think Israel is prepared to go along with a breaking fighting with Iran, but Lebanon, they see they haven't finished the job, and there are many, not just Prime Minister Netanyahu's opponents, but members of his own cabinet saying, you know, Israel is a sovereign country and it shouldn't be dictated to by President Trump how it behaves.
John Donaldson in Jerusalem. Our security correspondent Frank Gardner has seen the text of the memorandum. Frank, where does this leave the Middle East?
I think it leaves it breathing a partial sigh of relief, but with a fair degree of skepticism and nervousness, certainly on the part of the Gulf states, because the deal allows for the Strait of Hormuz to be fully open for 60 days without anybody being charged any tolls. But after that, there is supposed to be Iran and Oman setting up some kind of future agreement. And Iran has made it very clear that having what it considers won this war, having survived it and come out on top, it considers, it now wants to change the arrangements that have been in place since 1968, whereby you have something called a traffic separation scheme, and traffic passes in two different directions with a 2-mile gap. They want to change that and exercise what they consider their sovereignty shared with Oman over the Strait of Hormuz. The Gulf Arab states are very unhappy about that. Then, of course, you've got the whole nuclear issue. In a way, we're right back to where we were on February the 27th, the day before this broke out, this war, because the nuclear file is still unresolved, and 60 days, 2 months, is a very short time to try and thrash out a deal that is as good as or better the JCPOA, that's the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action that the Obama administration oversaw together with the P5 countries plus the EU back in 2015. That took 20 months, not 2 months, 20 months. You've got to go through all the stuff like how is this 441 kilos of highly enriched uranium, how is that going to get down blended and made safe? By who, when, under what kind of monitoring scheme? How are you going to ensure that UN nuclear inspectors get full access, that Iran doesn't play games and start denying them access to places, changing the rules of the game? And then how do you ensure that this $300 billion that is going to go for the reconstruction of Iran doesn't just get funneled into the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps operations?
Frank, thank you. Our security correspondent, Frank Garner. You're listening to the newsroom from the BBC World Service. Still to come.
It's a big blow for our family. She was not ill for long, only 1 week, and then she died. She's left behind children. I don't know how we will cope.
We're in Congo as families of Ebola victims bury their loved ones. Plumes of thick smoke have been seen above Moscow today as Ukrainian drones struck a major oil refinery for the second time in a week. In fact, it looks like the heaviest drone attack of the war so far on the Russian capital. Russia itself launched overnight attacks on the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, and the northeastern Ukrainian city of Sumy. Our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, can join us now live from Moscow. Steve, what's the scene there? Well, we're in the centre of Moscow, not so far from Red Square, but I think even from here we can see the clouds of thick smoke in the distance. Yeah, Muscovites woke up this morning to the news that their city was under attack again. It's not the first time that the Moscow region has been attacked by Ukrainian drones, but the scale of this particular strike does seem to have been pretty large, judging by the figures. The official figures that the Moscow mayor, Sergei Sobyanin, quoted earlier today. He talked about, first of all, 180 Ukrainian drones having been shot down by Russian air defences. Then he added some more to that. So we think around 200 or so Ukrainian drones, according to official Russian figures, were shot down on their way to the Russian capital. There has been damage, reports of damage. It's not clear to me yet whether the damage was caused by drones that were shot down or by drones that penetrated air defences. But the Moscow mayor himself has said that the Moscow oil refinery in the southeast of the city was hit for the second time in 3 days, actually. And there's a video on social media of thick black smoke rising above this oil refinery. Reports about the damage to outside the city. So yes, Muscovites are getting used to these kind of reports now. As I say, this is not the first time that the Russian capital has come under attack. Yeah, I mean, for the first few years of the war, people in Russia were largely shielded from the effects. Are these kind of attacks starting to make them change their minds about the so-called special military operation? Well, certainly these kind of attacks are making people realise and face the fact that there is a war going on. You're absolutely right. For the first 2 or 3 years, many people in Russia, certainly here in Moscow, carried on as normal. For them, for many people, the war was something that happened on television, a long way away from them. It didn't impact their lives directly. But of course, when there are Ukrainian drones coming pretty close and causing damage to an oil refinery, to an apartment block, to a shopping centre, this brings it home. It brings home the fact that actually the front line in this war is not hundreds of kilometres away in Ukraine, but sometimes it's here in the Russian capital. And we know that there is this sort of deep sense of fatigue with the war. Surveys show it, conversations on the street show it. People feel more and more that the war is impacting their lives, economically, for example. And also more and more people know other people who are fighting in Ukraine and being injured and being killed.
Okay, Steve, thank you very much. Steve Rosenberg there, our Russian editor. Next to the Democratic Republic of Congo and the ongoing Ebola outbreak. The most contagious phase of the disease is when an infected person dies. So how the dead are handled determines in a big way how quickly an outbreak can be controlled. Burials have long been linked to mass infection events during Ebola outbreaks. The BBC's Anne Soy has been talking to volunteers as they bury victims of Ebola in Ituri province, in the northeast of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
It's a very emotional time just outside the Ebola treatment unit. And behind me is a family waiting for their child. We have seen some of the healthcare workers inside, fully kitted in personal protective equipment, bring out a body that looked like a child's body. And now the Red Cross volunteers have just arrived. They will also put on the personal protective equipment. And then the medics on the inside will hand over the body to them. We are about to accompany the family of a 34-year-old mother of 4. She has died from Ebola.
It's a big blow for our family.
That's the deceased woman's father, Simone Nyalo.
She was not ill for long, only 1 week, and then she died. She's left behind children. I don't know how we will cope.
They have now placed the coffin on the pickup truck, and now they are removing the personal protective equipment that they wore here, and that is done sequentially as another team observes, making sure there's no chance of infection. We've now come to Nyamurongo Cemetery, and the Red Cross team is wearing aprons, white aprons, and they've just lowered the body into the grave. There are a few members of the family here. It's a very short session. The volunteers have gone back to the car. I think this is the quickest burial I've ever attended. Next to Simone's family, we find Joel Lonzama Kombu alone covering his mother's grave. He has lost 3 sisters, a brother-in-law, and his parents in a matter of days.
Today is the 6th. I came here at the cemetery to say bye for members in my family. My father, yesterday, and today, you see I'm here just to say bye for my mama. I want to say for all of people that Ebola is true.
I have never seen anything like this. There's so many families here that have come for burials just today, and this is happening every single day. There are many freshly covered graves, many more being dug today. The number of people being buried in just this cemetery in Bunia is high. Even the locals are saying that this is not usual. The International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent says hundreds of community volunteers have signed up to help families conduct safe burials.
It's very cultural. That's why we adapt the procedure as much as possible to match the needs of the families and the communities.
Maria Munoz is the coordinator for public health emergencies at the Red Cross. She shows me how they have modified body bags to enable families to view their loved ones safely.
Families often want to make sure that it's their loved ones in the back. We can show them the face of their loved one. Once the body is secured, the back is disinfected.
There have been incidents of violence when some families have tried to take the bodies of their relatives forcefully, rejecting safe burial protocols. It's a difficult period for both the community and volunteers trying to help them to stop Ebola. It's challenging but vital work to help bring the outbreak under control.
And Soy reporting from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, when we think of sharks, we tend to imagine large predators' mouth filled with razor-sharp teeth, hunting for prey beneath the waves. But, and I don't want to worry you here, there are actually some kinds of shark that can walk, with most of their bodies out of the water. Well, now scientists have identified a new species of walking shark in Papua New Guinea. It uses its pectoral fins to move across the reefs at low tide.
This one is named after Christine Dudgeon from the University of the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, Australia, who discovered it.
So they're called walking sharks because they're little sharks less than a metre long, and they tend to be in quite shallow water, and they have this adaptation for living in low oxygen environments. And so during low tide periods, when the water becomes very low and it's too low for them to swim through, they can move around in it on their pectoral and pelvic fins, so they use them like little legs basically. And occasionally they'll also come out of the water and go across little dry bits to get into other reef pools, but they don't really spend time outside of the water as such.
And in fact, you found this new shark in the water.
Indeed, yeah. So we were on an expedition in Papua New Guinea looking for a known species of walking shark, which is known as the Milne Bay walking shark or Michael's walking shark. We were conducting surveys in an area of Milne Bay called the Amphlett Islands. They tend to be more active at night time. This time the water was a little bit deeper, so it was about 1 metre in depth, and so we were snorkeling around at the time when we found it. Because they're quite small, they're actually reasonably easy to catch. So this one was just swimming along the bottom. I shone the torch in front of it, which made it stop for a moment, and then I was able to sort of dive down quickly and grab it behind the head, and then I just secured the tail under my armpit because they're quite wriggly, so they will try and sort of get away, and that's really all that's required. It's not too difficult.
Yeah, and tell us about how it's different from the other walking sharks.
This new species makes 10 species in total. They are found all through northern Australia and eastern Indonesia and Papua New Guinea. They are all very similar in size and shape, but differ based on body pattern. And so the species we were looking for has a very distinctive leopard print pattern. When I caught this one, I didn't actually look at the pattern closely because it was nighttime and I was just excited to find one. So I just sort of secured it and took it back to the boat and handed it up to my student Jess Blakeway, who's the lead author on this study. And Jess was the first person to look at it closely and notice that the pattern was completely different to the one that we were looking for, and indeed to any of the other species of walking shark.
And how did you establish that it was a different species from all the others?
Just on one specimen, it's not really enough. Over the next couple of days, we surveyed 3 sites, the one we were at in the seagrass shallow coral area, and also a couple of coral sea mounts a little bit deeper, and we found another 11 individuals of this new species, and they all had this new pattern, and this included males and females, small ones, big ones. And so based on the morphology, our chief taxonomist, Dr. Jerry Allen, was pretty convinced that this was a new species, and then just followed up with some genetics work that also confirmed it.
Shark expert Christine Dudgeon. Our main news again, the United States and Iran have signed an agreement aimed at ending their war. It includes an end to fighting on all fronts, including Lebanon, and the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. In the past few minutes, shipping data is said to show that 3 Saudi-flagged supertankers with 6 million barrels of crude oil are sailing through the strait as we speak. And that's it for now from the newsroom.
Distribution of BBC World Service in the U.S. is supported by Odoo.com, providing business management software with integrated programs for accounting, manufacturing, and operations. Odoo, all your business on one platform. And Bank of America, sponsor of the FIFA World Cup 2026, dedicated to offering solutions to help businesses meet their goals. bankofamerica.com/gamechangers.
Coming up on Business Daily, the US and Iran are due to sign a big deal looking to get ships moving through the Strait of Hormuz. So, how quickly can supplies of gas and oil start flowing more freely? And how quickly could energy prices start to ease? That's Business Daily, after the latest world news.
BBC News with Jane Steele. The United States and Iran have signed a memorandum of understanding intended to lead to an end to their war. They say military operations will end immediately on all fronts, including in Lebanon. Work on implementing the deal starts on Friday in Switzerland. Iran and the US will meet along with Pakistani and Qatari mediators. Oil prices fell 3% after the signing. Ukraine has struck an oil refinery in Moscow for the second time this week, setting it ablaze. The bombardment appears to have been the biggest on the Moscow region since the start of Russia's war. The US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has told a meeting of NATO counterparts that European members must move fast to take primary responsibility for the defense of the continent. He said the US would be reviewing its NATO commitments and contributions would be contingent on other allies meeting commitments. Heavy gunfire and explosions have been heard in the capital of Niger, Niamey. Insurgents are said to have attempted to take over the airport. Security forces have locked down the surrounding area. Cuba's communist government has approved reforms aimed at opening up more sectors of the economy to private investment. The Caribbean nation is dealing with an acute economic crisis due to a punitive US fuel blockade of the island. A British charity has launched a campaign to highlight the rise in incidents of domestic abuse during major football tournaments like the World Cup. Research says cases rise by almost 40% in England when the national team loses. The increased pattern of abuse is global. A shark in Papua New Guinea that can walk with most of its body out of the water has been identified as a new species. The shark uses its pectoral fins like legs to move across reef flats at low tide. DNA tests have confirmed it's distinct from the other 9 species of walking shark already known to science. All are found in Australia and Papua New Guinea. BBC News.
Raoul, have you ever signed a deal and it's taken ages for it to kick in?
Well, you won't be surprised about this, Michelle, but I do like deals, not just cinema deals, but yeah, when I bought my house, I got so excited. Then it took me months to actually get in it. So I had to live with my parents, which I didn't mind so much, but I have to say, if you ask my wife about it, you might get a slightly different answer to it.
All right, well, we're not talking about domestic deals here. We're talking about something a little bit bigger. The US and Iran are due to sign a big deal on Friday, and it involves the Strait of Hormuz. And when it closed, you may recall 1/5 of the world's oil stopped moving. The world immediately felt it. So how quickly can everything go back to normal? That's on today's episode of Business Daily. I'm Michelle Fleury in New York.
I'm Rahul Tandon here in the UK. Normally, I would have William Bay sat next to me, but Michelle, he's deserted. He's gone off to watch some cricket instead, which I think is a bit rude of him.
I thought you were going to say he hot-footed it to Mexico or something to watch one of the host countries in the World Cup.
No. He's got to watch the cricket, but I think we've got a better replacement. We've got someone who's even better than him, haven't we?
Yes, we have a very special guest. The BBC's economic editor, Faisal Islam, is with us. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Michelle. Hi, Rob.
Let's get to the Strait of Hormuz. Where is it? What's going on, Faisal?
Well, I mean, how could anyone not know what it is now? That it may have been forgiven about 3 or 4 months ago, but clearly it is the small 21-mile body of narrowest point, essentially, between the southern coast of Iran and the north coast of essentially a part of Oman. And it's the narrowest point, obviously, controlling entry into and out of, critically, the Persian Gulf. It has been, and still remains, although not quite just now, the main artery for not just energy, but the economy, and not just oil, these days increasingly gas, which gets pumped and drilled and taken out of the ground, wherever it gets taken out of the ground, and then put on ships. If it's gas, it gets frozen, and then shipped en masse, non-stop, 365 days a year, out of the Gulf and onto world markets, until, of course, what occurred roughly 3 months ago.
Yeah, and there's a lot of it, isn't it? If we go back to 2025, there were 20 million barrels of oil and oil products that were passing through the Straits of Hormuz, got 20% of the world's LNG that goes through there. And a lot of it particularly goes to those big countries like China and India and Asia. And they've really, really struggled since this has been closed, which was around the 28th of February.
And so you have this twin impact that has hit the world economy hard, which is the physical supply of oil, gas, and then a whole lot of other things as well, which we'll get onto. But then also the price impact, the anticipation that this will last for some time to come, and therefore that has sort of yanked up prices in such a way that the kind of ripple effect from the Gulf and from the Strait of Hormuz has been felt instantly in the gas stations, the petrol stations, on people's bills all around the world.
Yeah, and that impact, I think, is worth pointing out, as you say, leading to kind of estimates from the UN that 32 million people could be plunged into poverty. Look, Roel, this has got me thinking in many ways. I know you like to talk about films. You know, here on Power Plays, we talk a lot about the main actors. In this particular case, that would be the politicians, the presidents, the state leaders. But it's the background cast, you know, the anonymous fleets, the crews, the logistics, the unseen supply chains here that are really the sort of central piece of this week's story, right? It's the invisible stuff which you don't notice until essentially it goes wrong.
Yeah, I think that is the case as well. And also, I suppose we have, and I've been talking to a lot of people on our programs here on the World Service, you know, shipping companies, people involved inside the industry. And it seems like good news, doesn't it? Hey, you know, the straits are open again, the world goes back to normal. But the word that's being used with me all the time, and I'd be interested to hear what Faisal's got to say about this, is uncertainty. You know, I was speaking to the big German container company, Hapag-Lloyd. They were saying, yes, look, this is good news, but we're not sure when we're going to be going through the Strait of Hormuz again. And there's lots of guarantees, there's lots of things that shipping companies need, and they need to start moving, don't they, Faisal? If we want to get the global economy, or parts of it, moving again.
There's a couple of ways to look at this. So I think the path we're on right now is definitively less bad than people had feared even a couple of weeks ago. Set against that, this is good news. Now that doesn't mean that it's going to, the hopeful narrative in the markets is going to come to pass. But you can see this sort of pathway now, and it has implications obviously for the oil price, and the gas price, and petrol prices, and domestic energy prices, but also inflation. All of these things have started to move in the right direction, and therefore you get this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. The better news is yielding better news. But you're absolutely right. At the heart of this is a highly unpredictable geopolitical fight, the like of which we haven't really seen before. And so that hope is fragile.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, Faisal, we're moving in the right direction. But Donald Trump likes to keep all options open. Have a listen to him speaking about the deal this week.
The only thing that really matters to me is Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. And it says it loud and clear. They're not going to develop it. They're not going to buy it. They're not going to do anything with it. And if they do, they suffer unbelievable consequences.
So let's take the optimistic view, right? And that this Friday, we see a deal, it gets signed, the clock strikes midnight. Somewhere on the Gulf, imagine you're standing on the bridge of a super tanker, you know, the length of 3 football fields, your cargo is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Someone hands you a press release. It says, good news, the strait is open. Do either of you set sail, or do you look and think to yourself, I don't trust this yet, Faisal?
No, you don't. You don't quite trust that piece of paper, I think, is the reality. And indeed, even before the strait at the beginning of this conflict had been formally closed, it sort of closed itself. What do I mean by that? The fear from insurance companies was so profound that the insurance rates shot up so high that they physically couldn't move. So if you like, insurance companies sort of became a kind of financial and then almost physical block on the movement of these giant carriers. So they'd also want to wait on the terms and conditions, as it were. You know, clearly there's a little bit of uncertainty around that. We're told by the White House that there's no tolls or anything like that. But clearly the Iranians, possibly and the Ahmadis, think that there's some degree of something going on there. Let's see what the detail of that is. So you've got the insurance, and then you've just got the physical, logistical effort, to turn the tanker around, as it were, and there's 118, I think, fully laden tankers. There's empty tankers in there. There's hundreds of other ships, up to 800 ships in there. Then you have to sequence the shipping through this narrow strait. And then there's the critical issue, which is a sort of military issue. And it's a bit of sort of Schrodinger's cat here, which is, what about the Iranian mines?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to get to we're going to talk about the mines a bit later, but I want to pick up on, you talked about paperwork there, legal questions, giant traffic jams. I mean, Roel, I know you've been speaking to a lot of people this week. What are you hearing? What sense are we hearing from the industry itself, from shippers?
I think it's interesting, and I think Faisal will agree with this, in that there was a positivity. This has been a really difficult time, and here we have some semblance of a move forward, but there were caution, and Faisal just listed them there. There are so many challenges ahead. There are so many different questions ahead. I mean, insurance is such a big one, isn't it? Because if insurance levels don't come down quickly enough, is it viable, as Faisal said, to move your ship through there? And what is going to cause that to come down? Are we going to need to see ships being escorted through? I've been speaking to Jacob Larson, he's Chief Safety and Security Officer at BIMCO, the world's largest membership organisation for shipping. This is what he's been telling me.
They really hope that this time it will actually materialize and that the deal will come through. But they're also a bit skeptical because they have seen now for a number of times these unilateral and overly optimistic announcements from Trump.
So, skepticism, unsurprisingly, there about how seriously we should take this. It's fascinating. You've got hundreds of ships still stuck there, seafarers aboard. It's hard to imagine what life has been like for some of them trapped in the Gulf, waiting to find out what happens next.
There's been a trickle through of ships, actually, as the peace moves have started. So, they've been sort of testing. Some ships have been testing just exactly what's going on in the strait. And the price of oil, gas, but oil mainly, has adjusted. Okay, not far off where it was in early March.
But at the same time, I mean, as we've established, the shipping lane may be open, but the ships, broadly speaking, at traffic levels we were used to seeing before this crisis, aren't using the shipping lane. So, diplomacy aside, it was something you touched on earlier, there is also still this question about safety and about what's in the seabed, the mines.
Yes, but I think you could make a reasoned judgment that flows will start to increase to something below half by the end of the year. And maybe they'll only ever get up to 70% by next year. But that's the sort of calculation that is now occurring. And it isn't just that. This has changed the reality of the Gulf, Michelle. You now have the Emiratis talking and possibly already starting to bypass the strait. And they already have a smaller pipeline. I understand that they're going to be building a whole load of other pipelines.
So you think if there is that flexibility, then reduced traffic, sea mines, not such a big deal?
Well, and you mentioned sea mines, and I think that's a fascinating question about the sea mines. And I raise this because I was hosted by the British Navy in the maritime trade operations in Portsmouth last month. And it was very interesting. I repeatedly asked about whether they knew where the mines were. I got the impression that no one really knew exactly how many mines there were, and indeed if there were.
Well, and the Iranians, though, won't they? They will know, and they will be the ones, if this is going to work, who will have to eventually answer that question and point the minesweepers to where they are. Otherwise, we're talking about this, we start very positively, we talk about the shipping companies saying, look, we're happy, things seem to be progressing, but it's the real danger here that we don't progress as quickly as we think we're going to progress.
I guess the assumption of the markets is that the Iranians have enough interest in the weakening of the sanctions regime against them and the ability and the desire and the need to rebuild after the damage done from the bombing from Iran and the US. It will be a slow process, but I think markets have factored in that this is going to be gradual. It literally will be turning tankers around. That is slow.
So markets looking forward, to what they see as the eventual full reopening, but hold your horses, it's going to take time. You're listening to Business Daily from the BBC World Service. So we've been looking at when reopening means recovered, and the key reason all of this matters in terms of getting ships moving again is to get the global economy moving again. And that's really at the nub of this, isn't it, Faisal, that it's been so hard?
Oh, absolutely. It's been hard, as we've said, for oil and gas, and the immediate knock-on impacts in the transmission of this shock via prices. It isn't just that, of course. There were great fears about other industries, about smaller industries that are all connected to gas and oil. We have a little competition here. We're trying to list the various
we like competition.
Niche chemicals, whether it's naphtha or helium, which is kind of used in chips, or whether it's urea.
MRIs.
Yes, yeah, or urea and fertilizer. Of course, critically, this is an interesting one because the timing here, I think, is very beneficial. As I had been told, the real concern was that fertilizer prices and availability would be deeply problematic for the Southern Hemisphere major sowing season in the big kind of soya wheat crops over the next 3 or 4 months. And they buy their fertilizer kind of in the next 4-6 weeks.
Rahul, I'm curious to sort of, you always talk to people around the world in terms of what you're hearing. I mean, I was hearing from Thailand, rice crops not being planted. What have you been hearing from other people you've been speaking to?
Well, I've spent a lot of time over the last few weeks talking to people in India because, as Faisal said, that Asia's badly affected, and particularly in India, cooking gas is such an important product that comes from the Middle East and from the Gulf region. And I'll give you one example with a factory owner that I spoke to. He had to shut his factory down. It's got nothing to do with cooking gas. But his workers came to him and said, look, we can't afford cooking gas at the moment. So you need to buy us cooking gas. It was so expensive on the black market, which is how it operates in those parts of India, he couldn't afford to do it. They said, we're not coming to work. So his factory shut down because of that. And on the other hand, there are huge amounts of exports. We are moving into the key season for tea exports in India. And the biggest market for tea is Iran and the Middle East. So there are a lot of tea garden owners who are desperately waiting for the Strait of Hormuz to open up again so they can get those products moving. And they are perishable. So if they don't move soon, their products are becoming worthless. So wherever you go across South Asia or other parts of Asia, speak to many businesses there, you will hear similar stories. Restaurants that have been shut down in many parts as well because they just cannot afford the prices as they began to creep up. So all those challenges that Faisal has so eloquently told us today about why the strait may not open are not good news for millions and millions of businesses across Asia who are desperate for this to get going again.
Well, and I was riding the bus to work the other day chatting to one of my neighbours, and they were hoping to book a trip, a flight to Asia. And as we know, airlines have been hugely affected by all of this. They were sort of delaying their purchase till the last possible minute in hopes that it will come down.
No. That flight's in 2 weeks. Book it as soon as you can to keep going. I wonder though, because the global economy's had so many shocks recently, we go back to the pandemic, we go back to the war in Ukraine. Lord Brown, former head of BP, said to me this was the biggest ever disruption he had seen in the global oil supply because there are so many of them. Now, like when you have a shock on the body, does it just take longer and longer to recover? And is that going to be one of the dangers here? We don't seem to be able to answer the question of when the Straits of Hormuz might be fully operational again, because there are so many bits of it that need to be answered. And while it takes longer and longer, I suppose the shock gets bigger and bigger in some ways, in spite of the resilience.
Yes, there is this sort of fear that the Gulf won't turn around and there'll be some other geopolitical strife that re-emerges, which I think is realistic, and you definitely factor it in. But then you also have this possibility that there'll be a glut of oil next year. There's a possibility that oil can go back up to $120 a barrel, $150 a barrel. But I think there's also a possibility that oil can be $50 a barrel next year. And so how do you price that? It's very, very difficult. That's the uncertainty you're talking about.
Well, I want to thank you both for some elegant tangoing. We will be tracking this story closely over the coming weeks as the situation on the water develops. But for now, from Rahul, Faisal and me, Michelle, thank you so much for listening to Business Daily from the BBC World Service.
BBC World Service, and this is Witness History with me, Rachel Naylor. I'm taking you back more than 50 years to the discovery of a skeleton that helped rewrite Australia's history. This is the controversial story of Mungo Man. I've been speaking to the scientist who found him. It's the 1970s and we're in the barren, remote Willandra Lakes region in New South Wales. But unlike the name suggests, there are no longer any lakes. They dried up 15,000 years ago. Geologist Dr. Jim Bowler from the Australian National University in Canberra is here to study ancient climate change.
But I was puzzled by the extent of dunes all up and down across the country, but no desert, and the existence of dry basins that we call lakes, but no water. So I decided that my geology was going to try to unwrap the story of those ancient landscapes.
But that's not his only aim. 6 years earlier, in 1968, Jim had accidentally found some ancient human bones. They became known as Mungo Lady, as she was found next to Lake Mungo, and she was estimated to be around 40,000 years old, far older than any other human remains found in Australia. Jim is sure there must be more out there. On the 26th of February 1974, due to a rare storm, he takes shelter in a solitary sheep station more than 100 kilometres from the nearest town.
I was locked up in what was the shearers' quarters with the sheep. I was sitting there, but I had my notebooks. You couldn't work in the wet. So I waited. The sky cleared, the sun came out, and I thought, I'm going to get out here. The rains, they sweep the surface, so they bring a new series of discoveries.
For that reason, Jim is feeling confident about the day ahead. So confident, he writes in his notebook,
I'm going out today to decide I might find something really interesting.
Wearing a safari hat, sunglasses and a leather jacket, Jim heads out on his motorbike to explore the dunes in the sun.
Well, probably about by the middle of the day, I noticed a white bone appearing on the wind-blown sandy surface. Now, I thought first case it was a wombat, so I slipped away just with my hands the tip of these bones, and below this round patch on the surface there was clearly a human jawbone, and that immediately implied the probable presence of a body on the ground on which I was then standing. I got back quickly as possible to the nearest telephone, rang my colleagues in Canberra. Now, at this stage, they already knew that, well, Bowler had found a few things of interest before, so they came immediately this time with a team of people.
Here was the further proof of ancient human life that Jim had been hoping for. At 4:18 p.m, he writes in his trusty notebook, Eureka! The next Mungo edition. Within 48 hours, his colleagues from the university, including archaeologist Dr. Alan Thorne, arrived to excavate the bones. Unlike Mungo Lady, here was a complete skeleton, and there was more.
Thorne said to me, what's this? He gave me a little pellet, and it was a pellet of iron oxide. And so immediately the penny dropped that this was not just iron oxide, it was ochre. And we could see a faint trace around the margins of the body that there was a faint reddening. This trace continued down from cranium down to the groin. This body had been anointed.
This was huge news. It showed that those who buried Mungo Man were more sophisticated than previously thought, as this BBC documentary from 1975 explains.
Red ochre in the grave can only signify that the ancient people of this lake believed in an afterlife and had created religious rituals at least as early as modern man in Europe. They have the earliest cremation in the world, which also indicates religion, and their pellets
I'm
of
a
oak
little
may make them
tired.
the first artists.
Bye-bye.
So that all came together on that single day.
Not bad for a day that's